Welcome into another episode of the Hang Time Podcast. Sekou Smith here in Atlanta. My main man, John Schumann, is in New Jersey. And we have another wild Wednesday in the books around the NBA. Steph Curry dropping 51 points in 31 minutes. 31 minutes on the Wizards. That comes on the heels of a 50-point performance for Blake Griffin and scoring up all around the league. Somebody better call Draymond Green and let him know the defense is no longer a priority in the NBA. Shu, how you doing, man?
I am good. Ready for big football game tonight, but I am happy to have absorbed what has been a wild first, 9 days in the league?
Yeah, it's been great. It's been great. And we're not going to talk Virginia Tech football on this podcast.
All right.
We'd be here all day. But later on, we're going to be joined by Anthony Slater of The Athletic to talk a little bit more about Steph Curry's crazy night and his hot start to the season, the Warriors and everything that they got going on. But before we do that, Shu, there was a lot of action around the league last night, some injuries that kind of scared some people in different places, some outstanding performances, again, that went on. I got to admit, Wednesday nights are my favorite. Not only do I get a chance to sit on the desk and hang around the studio on Game Time and Crunch Time on NBA TV with Dennis Scott and Matt Weiner, Rick Kamler, Jared Greenberg, Wes Wilcox, former GM of the Atlanta Hawks, was in with us last night, Shu. But we get to watch all the games. I mean, we got screens everywhere, so we're eyeballing all this action that's going on. I'm stunned at how well Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Bucks are playing and just how different they look. What stood out to you canvassing the league last night, Shu, and watching all those games?
Well, I can't do the whole watch 10 time thing. So I was focused on first Atlanta and Dallas for the Luka Doncic, Trae Young Bowl one.
Yeah. Huge comeback by the Hawks.
It was crazy. Like I forget much Dallas was up, but they were up by a lot in the early second quarter. And I was ready to, have this great point about how Dallas just is a little bit more experienced and was just executing so much better, especially in pick and roll. And
right,
because both teams were playing each other sort of the same as far as pick and roll coverage, and the Mavs just were chewing up the Hawks a little bit, just with their sort of, even their rookies have more experience, like, Doncic and Jalen, is it Brunson, right?
Brunson, yeah, from Villanova.
Yeah, exactly. Those are experienced rookies, sort of, right? But then the Hawks just came back with a ton of energy, and they did it with Trae Young off the floor. Really, DeAndre Bembry had a terrific game, just brought a ton of energy, and they just sort of overwhelmed the Mavs in the sort of latter part of the second quarter. And then again, in the second half, Young dealt with foul trouble in the first half, struggled quite a bit. Doncic was off to a hot start. He had his sort of patented step back three, but also just really good at dealing with that sort of drop pick and roll coverage where the big man just sort of sags into the paint. He's good at those sort of mid-range to floater shots, and was, it was off to a really hot start. But then, Trae Young really rebounded in the second half and made some huge plays down the stretch. One spin move on Dennis Smith Jr.
Shook him up, and then put him in the blender and everything.
Shook him up, but then also finished through contact on that play, which was just fantastic. And so he came through down the stretch. It was Doncic early, Trae Young late, and I'm impressed. Like, I wasn't sure what to think of Trae Young. The one thing I like about him is he's getting to the basket. He's not just he's like
not just a gunner.
He's like, the one thing I always say about the Warriors is, one, they're just a great shooting team, but they leverage their shooting to get layups. Like they take advantage of teams trying to get them off the 3-point line, and they just get better shots, be it passing or just, Steph with the little hezzy move that gets a guy off his feet and then gets to the cup. And Steph as the years have gone by, has become a much better finisher at the rim. And I assume the same will happen with Trae Young. But I like that. Like, I watched a little bit of his game against Cleveland the other day, and he was just blowing by the Cavs defenders. Now, that's something to say about Cleveland. They look absolutely awful.
Atrocious.
Yeah, they looked absolutely awful early in the season. But I like him getting into the basket, getting into the paint. He's averaging like 7.5 points in the paint per game, which is tied for the lead on the Hawks. So it's not just about him shooting threes. And obviously his passing is fantastic. There was one pass last night, which is one of my favorite passes of the season so far, where Taurean Prince was running up the left sideline and Trae Young was in the backcourt, maybe 10 feet in the backcourt, and throws a dart at Taurean Prince. And when the pass was in the air, Torian Prince wasn't even looking at it. He was just running down the sideline with his head forward. And then all of a sudden, he turns his head and the ball is 2 feet from his hands. And he makes a great catch and then a quick in-rhythm corner three. But it was just great vision. Like, he's not the kind of point guard that's just looking to make every play and get the assists, after handling the ball. Like, I like that. We've seen this in Lonzo Ball, that he's willing to push the ball ahead, knowing that, one, shots early in the clock are usually good, but against a defense that isn't set yet. A pass like that now gets the defense scrambling and can really open some things up. But just to see that pass and to have the guts to throw it when the guy isn't even looking was something that I loved. I love seeing that kind of thing. So I'm quickly becoming a Trae Young fan.
Yeah, I think people forget that, when these guys are coming up, they play high-level basketball, grassroots basketball. He was the point guard on the MoCan Elite travel team with Michael Porter, Jonte Porter. He's played with other elite-level guys. He didn't just spend 1 year at Oklahoma, and that's the only time he's ever played with, high-caliber players. So he's had plenty of experience running a team, knowing how to get his shots, get what he wants. It's funny, the rookies, so many of the rookies are standing out early on this year, that I almost feel like we're overlooking, or not overlooking, but maybe not focusing as much on some of the vets. The Lakers got their first win last night, put it on Phoenix, and LeBron is still shepherding these young guys along. He looks different to me. His first couple of games, LeBron looked like he was kind of measuring himself. Now he looks like he's kind of getting back into the normal LeBron lather we're used to. One team shoe that didn't perform up to its expectations Wednesday night, and it has me concerned, is the Houston Rockets. Lost James Harden to a soft tissue injury, looks like a hamstring or something with no more.
Hamstrings are going around. There's like everybody. There's a bunch of guys out with hamstring issues.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. And the Rockets, I know most people look at them and say, oh, they're 1-3, nothing to worry about, based on what they did last year. I have concerns about the Rockets. They don't strike me as the same hungry, aggressive group that we saw last season from the start. I'm going to reserve the right to revisit my Rockets concerns if I look up in a few weeks and they still don't seem like they figured it out, or if they continue to have to grapple with, an injury to Harden. No CP3, of course, because of the suspension. And Donovan Mitchell worked him for 38 last night. I am officially on the concern bus where the Houston Rockets are at right now, 4 games into the season.
I mean, I'll just say this. It's just 4 games, but every game means something. Like, every game is a data point, in the great words of the great Sam Hinkie.
Trust the process.
And so, like, we thought before the season there was reasons for concern, right? And 4 games is just 4 games, but it's at some point we're going to get to 10 games and to 20 games, and 20 games is when we really know. The one thing I'll say is last year, and I wrote this before the season in the part of the One Team, One Stat series, is they set a record basically for isolation efficiency. They led the league in the percentage of their possessions that were isolations, and then they basically set a record in the 14 years that Synergy Sports has been tracking play types. The 1.12 points per possession that the Rockets scored on isolations was by far the best mark. Like, no other team before last season had even scored a point per possession on isolations, according to Synergy. And part of that is they have 2 great isolation scorers, James Harden, Chris Paul, all both terrific and great passers too. So they can break down a guy on isolation and get an assist, and they had good shooters around them.
Right.
But part of me is like, okay, but how sustainable is that number, considering it was by far the best mark of the last 14 years? Can they repeat that with, 1, Paul getting a little bit older, and 2, maybe that's just not sustainable. And so maybe they've got to find other ways to be better. And I think the defense has taken a step backward. Michael Carter-Williams is killing their offense when he's on the floor. And, James Ennis was hurt last night, right? And so it's like, okay, now Michael Carter-Williams in the starting small forward, and you're like, oh, okay, so they really do miss Trevor Ariza. I know he hasn't shot particularly well in Phoenix yet, but
it doesn't mean anything.
But like, just the respect that he gets from the perimeter means a lot, because there was a possession last night where Carmelo was posted on Jay Crowder, and you don't necessarily need to double that, because Carmelo's probably going to shoot a mid-range shot, and the value on an attempt for that isn't great. But Donovan Mitchell took off from the weak side corner where he was guarding Carter-Williams and just said, I'm going to go double this. And
you don't have to worry about Carter.
And so Carter-Williams has got to figure a way to be useful on this team. When they first signed him, I wasn't sure that this was a Rockets kind of player, and I'm not sure he's going to last the season. And I think that's one thing we got to expect with the Rockets, is that the team that they have now is not going to be the team that they have at the end of the season.
Could be. One team you don't have to worry about being there at the end shoot, the Golden State Warriors. We both know that. And so does our guest, Anthony Slater of The Athletic, joining us here on the Hang Time Podcast. Slater, I want to ask you a quick question. And I know, like the rest of us who cover the league, everybody wants to talk about whatever team you cover, or you sit down in a barbershop, they want to talk about the Warriors. What do you realistically tell people about what it's like being around the Warriors on this run and what they're doing? Because I was thinking about that last night, watching Steph, and I was like, I wonder if the people that watch Steph night after night are comprehending exactly what we're seeing, just how historic, how novel his game is. And that 51-point performance just drove that home for me last night.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange because during the regular season the last few years, especially during like random home games, it can get duller than people would realize, especially in Oracle where it's just they're beating up another opponent. But any given night, something like last night, I mean, you're going in, it's against the Wizards. You're not like expecting that much. You're expecting something similar to, a couple days earlier when the Suns were in there. They pounded Suns pretty good, but there wasn't anything too crazy happening. But sometimes it's Clay going for 60 points in 29 minutes against the Pacers. Sometimes it's KD going for, he's got 40 on like 15 shots or something. He's like 14 of 15 on crazy efficiency. Or it's Steph. I remember last year he had 0 threes in a game against the Lakers. It was like the first time in 100-something games. I think it was the record. He had, snapped. Then the next night they come home, they play the Pelicans, and he sets the NBA record for threes in a game, 13 threes in a game. And then obviously what you saw last night, 11 threes. Right at this point of the season, he's got more threes than like 4 other NBA team threes by themselves right now. So it's crazy to see history within a season that, a lot of times, especially more than other teams in the league that have more interesting storylines. They're trying to find themselves. Houston's trying to kind of reconfigure. LA's obviously going through what they're going through. The Warriors are so settled in what they do, but then suddenly you're sitting there and you're not expecting much, and it's like, boom, history. And then also on the road, it's just you're following the Beatles a lot of times. I mean, the road arenas have become more interesting than the home arenas because there's just so many people that are just like, oh, like we're seeing them for the first time, whereas Oakland, they're used to seeing it, but it's definitely a treat.
I'm curious how you look at a team like that. All these narratives floating around. I was I was debating kindly today on Twitter this morning with Nick Wright and some other people, who are kind of making this argument that Steph and KD have basically ruined each other's legacies because, they're not going to win any more individual awards. They're both MVPs, Steph with 2, obviously, KD with 1, but like they'll never win another MVP because they on the same team now, and they've kind of ruined, they've ruined basketball narrative, that everybody likes to talk about. I'm on the other side of that, Anthony. I tend to think that history will be much kinder to the Warriors than, the daily narrative is, because we don't remember narratives 20 years later. We remember champions. We remember the team that was the best. You don't hang banners for narratives. You hang banners for winning titles. And to me, that will be their lasting legacy more so than whatever the daily Twitter conversation is about these Warriors.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I think if you look at Kevin Durant, he could have stayed in Oklahoma City, and, Twitter would tell you and whoever else would tell you that would have been better for his legacy. But what if he's sitting there without a ring still? And he's 30 years old right now.
Right.
He's kind of hitting that more downside in the mountain. We would be saying a lot of stuff about Kevin Durant still being ringless, and like, how good is he really in the grand scheme of his legacy? So the fact that he's got 2 titles, 2 finals MVPs, probably, definitely the heavy favorite to get a 3rd title this season. That's been kind of like obviously a huge uptick for his legacy. I think he's learned to become a much better basketball player on the Warriors too, even if he goes elsewhere after the season, just as an off-ball guy, as a defender. I mean, the shot blocking that he's had since he's come to the Warriors, I just think he's a lot better. So that just helps him become, have a better legacy, I guess you could say. And then, Steph Curry, he's 2 MVP. It's a short list of people in the league ever to get multiple MVPs.
Right.
Will he get another one? I don't know, but I don't know that he necessarily needs one. What does Kobe have? 1 or no? Shaq has 1 MVP.
Kobe and Shaq both only have 1.
Oh, they both only have 1. There you go. There's legends, greats that have less MVPs than Steph Curry already has, and that's not to say I'd say he's probably the favorite through 5 games. I mean, who cares? It's 5 games.
Right.
MVPs are still winnable for these guys. I mean, if Steph just stays healthy, if he just stayed healthy last year, I think he would have been in the MVP conversation. He just only was able to play 51 games. So I think that's still obtainable. And then, as you said, I just think titles are the big thing. Steph Curry will be getting his 4th this year if they can win it. And history would look down upon that great. And then as far as ruining the league, this was maybe one of the best opening weeks of the NBA I can remember.
Yeah.
And if, we're not debating who's going to win the title or not. Yes, the Warriors are heavy favorites, but some of the stuff going on around the league, I mean, even Blake Griffin getting 50 points, like, we're not sitting here going, are the Pistons now title favorites? It's still just great basketball going on.
I agree.
Last year we saw some slippage from this team in the regular season. Do you feel like this season feels any different? Are they more locked in, especially defensively early on? Do you feel like there's a little bit more purpose with this start of the season?
Yeah, there's definitely more focus. I think last year they, in some ways, kind of like were embarrassed with how little they cared. I think there's going to be patches during the season where they really kind of are dull. And I mean, if you look last year, they were 4-3 through 7 games. And Steve Kerr, I remember in LA, they had just turned it over 25 times and like a home loss to the Pistons. And the next night he was in there already talking about just how fried they were mentally already. And it was like, 7 games in. I think that China trip that they took to start the last season, they always kind of used that as a crutch. And he now says he believes he kind of like talked it into existence because he told the team so much how tough it was going to be. So they've taken a different like tactic this year. He says, no, we're just going to enjoy the process. I think they have more. Again, it's only 5 games, but I think the addition of DeMarcus Cousins, I know he hasn't played yet, but he's kind of coming on the backside. He's going to be kind of a turbo boost to this team. I think they're going to kind of live through him, a guy who's never been in the playoffs, never been in really a playoff chase before. So that'll help. And then also they just got a lot more young guys in the rotation that are trying to create NBA careers instead of, the Zazas, the David West, who really were there to just kind of ring chase a bit and wait for the playoff time. So I just think they're set up for more regular season interest than last year.
That leads me to like 2 more questions. One is, we heard that Cousins is cleared for like parts of practice at this point. What's the sense that you get on his timeline realistically as far as when he might actually play in a game? Because it's hard to know from, just being cleared to participate in some parts of practice to know exactly what that means. And then 2, with the young guys, like what's the early returns on the Damian Jones, the Looneys, and the Jordan Bells of the world?
As far as Cousins, they will not like set any type of expected, we'll reevaluate him in 3 weeks plus. They will not give like an actual like numeric like time value because they're just trying to be super careful with him. I think he's ahead of their schedule. I think they'll definitely tell you that away from recorders that he arrived I think in a better place than they thought they would. He's in really good shape as far as like that was like a concern. A big guy gets an Achilles tear, possibly he get a little heavy, and then the conditioning's like tough to get back. They believe he's in pretty good conditioning, but an Achilles it's so different than other injuries. You obviously you get the Achilles stable, you get it healed, but then you got to do so many balancing and different stuff around that. And just because they have such an ability to allow him to heal without rushing him back, if he was on the Lakers, which I know is a team that probably should have looked at him, and he was definitely interested in, they would be like already trying to like, all right, how close are you, Cousins? Because like they need him. They would need to get him going to get regular season wins. The Warriors obviously don't need that. So I would guess December, maybe late December, January area. I'm kind of putting the over-under mark, or however you want to put it. Like, is it going to be in 2018 or is it going to be in 2019? I'm guessing maybe late 2018. I think it definitely could. Like, they could, if they really accelerated this thing and put it where most teams probably would if they were trying to rush him back, I think it could probably be like early December, but I think they'll wait a while, and it'll be right around the new year. And as far as the young guys, Damian Jones, he definitely passed his first test. I mean, look, they started him at center. His first 4 games were Adams, Gobert, Jokic, and then DeAndre Ayton. All big dudes. He played pretty well. He's just kind of that perfect fit around the 4 All-Stars where you can just throw lobs. He's really in the JaVale McGee role from last year. See how he is, especially getting targeted and pick and roll. He hasn't really faced that much. Still think defensively he's a question mark, but he can do what JaVale McGee did, which is just catch, open lobs and throw them down. Jordan Bell not playing nearly as much as expected in year 2. I think they're using him really more in small ball matchups. I think there is a bit of disappointment about where he is right now. Kevon Looney, just pretty steady guy. Backup center, can really guard well, switch and everything. So I think they're happy where those 3 centers are, especially with Cousins, who will be starting once he gets back.
Right.
It's interesting they've played Looney and Jones together a little bit. I remember seeing that, I guess it was opening night, and it surprised me, but I don't think it's hurt them at all. I think they've been able to do that, and I guess that it puts a little bit less pressure on Draymond Green to play a ton of minutes, which is a good development, I think.
Yeah, that's the main thing. They've kind of had backup power forward issues in the past, and they really kind of do this year too. But Jerebko, I think, is going to get some backup forward. When it comes down to it, Kevin Durant's going to play a lot of power forward if we're talking playoff time. I don't think you're going to see a ton of two big lineups like a Looney Jones or a Looney Bell or even like a Looney Cousins come playoff time. But for now, they're just trying to save minutes for Draymond. They don't want to play as much Draymond small ball until they have to.
Yeah, it makes sense. Warriors on the road Friday night in New York. It's on NBA TV at 7:30. Anthony, we look at this Warriors team and we know the run they've been on the past 4 years is the most ridiculous run in NBA history if you just look at the wins and losses, winning 3 out of 4 titles. Everybody is curious, what's the first thing that falls off on this Warriors monster? Who leaves first? Or, who hits free agency and decide to break this thing up? I'm stunned that they haven't gotten more fatigued yet. I don't know if it's just the way they were built. Outside of KD, they really were an organic bunch in terms of guys that were drafted and raised in that organization. Have you been surprised at all at how well they've weathered all of the things that could go wrong for a team on a historic run like this?
I mean, if you just know the personalities, it makes sense. I mean, I know it might seem surprising, but just how genuine Steph can be as far as he can share the spotlight. He can bring Kevin Durant in and be okay with that. He's so secure in his life, and I'm talking family life, I'm talking everything, and he's secure in knowing how much this fan base loves him. And then if you know Klay Thompson appreciates the fact that he can be as good as he is, but also not get the attention that he gets because he's just kind of chilling. He doesn't like talking to the media really. He's walking off the court after practice and they'll be like, "Hey Klay, they need you over here." He's like, "Come, how about they get Steph? How about they get KD?" So it's just they just got a lucky personality in Klay, really, when you think about it. And then Draymond Green can be who Draymond is, and they allow that, and he gets appreciation for his defense. On a lot of teams, and Draymond's very smart about this. He knows this, that if you put him tomorrow on, whoever, put him on the Magic, he would not get nearly the attention he gets. He wouldn't be nearly really the player. He has to score more. Sure, his points per game would go up, but he wouldn't be an all-star.
Right.
And he knows that. So, I mean, he kind of knows what this team and what this era has done to his brand, really. Kevin Durant's Kevin Durant. They brought him in. We'll see if he's still happy here at the end of the year and he stays. But the Warriors have done all they ever promised to Kevin Durant, which was deliver him 2 titles, deliver him a stage to win 2 Finals MVPs, and bump that part of his resume up. So, I mean, I think they're all getting what they want out of it. Now, if they had lost to the Rockets in the West Finals last year, and they very well could have, it would have been interesting how this team handles failure. But they haven't had to handle failure yet. So if you keep winning at the end of the day with these personalities, I think, they can survive.
Yeah.
I know Klay definitely doesn't want to talk to the media when he's shooting 4 for 27 from 3-point range.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's the amazing thing about a 4-1 start. They're 4-1 with Thompson and Durant combined to shoot 8 from 43.
I don't care how bad Klay Thompson shoots at this time. I'm not worried about Klay.
Oh, I'm not worried about it either. I just think I just know. I remember seeing him at USA Basketball when he was shooting. He had a couple of poor shooting games to start the Olympics a couple of years ago, and he just didn't want to talk about it. I remember we came up to him and he's just like, I don't want, he's just frustrated with himself, and then obviously didn't want to have to talk about why I'm shooting poorly or anything like that.
Yeah, he kind of pouts a little bit when he's in slumps, but it's crazy. His preseason, I think it was 16 of 29 from 3. I mean, it was almost as good as I've ever seen him shoot. Remember, I don't know if you guys watched that Seattle game and when KD came out in the Sean Kemp jersey. Yeah. He stole the show in that game. He scored, I think, 21 in the first quarter, hit 6 first-quarter threes. I thought, and I actually predicted before the season, I'm predicting Klay's going to have more made threes than Steph, and he's going to become the second person ever with 300 threes. Steph's obviously the only guy with 300, only guy with 400. It does not look good early. It's 33-3 Steph so far. Steph has 33 threes. The rest of his teammates, his 13 teammates, have 20 combined right now.
That's unbelievable.
So it's kind of been wild to watch early in the season. But as you guys know, Klay has these mini slumps, and then suddenly he'll have 13, 10 threes, next game, and then suddenly he's up, 10 away from Steph within a week. So he's just one of those guys that, go through these funks and then suddenly just go nuclear for about a week.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things about Klay, and his reluctance to embrace the media is one of my favorite things about him just in general. In a league where every dude is worried about his brand, making sure he's, tweeting and on his social media every 5 minutes. I appreciate Klay's disdain for attention. It's a breath of fresh air. Shu, do you have a Schumann stat? I know we've talked a bunch of numbers today already, but you got to have something that suits our conversation, Warriors related.
I do. So as you guys know, Steph Curry moved to 5th all time on 3-pointers made list last night, passing Jamal Crawford, who I assume, while he's still playing, will never catch Curry again. He's got 2,162 3-pointers, and he's done that in 477 fewer games than anybody else in the top 10 in 3-pointers made. So here's the question. Steph came in the league in 2009, so this is his 10th season. Who are the other 4 guys in the top 5 in 3-pointers made since 2009? So in the 10 years since Curry came into the league. Curry is number 1 with 2,162, which is exactly 500 more than any other player since he came into the league.
Who am I guessing this?
Yeah, you
sure.
Definitely. I always need help.
All right. Clay, I think.
Clay is number 3 at 1,561.
Kyle Korver?
Kyle Korver, number 5, 1,377.
Okay. 2009.
Who else is a
Ray Allen?
I'm trying to think who else is a gunner.
No, not Ray Allen. Who shoots a ton of threes right now? What team? What star on what team?
What about Bradley Beal?
Nope, no Bradley Beal.
James.
What were you going to say?
James Harden.
James Harden. He's number 2, 1,662. So he has 500 fewer than Curry since 2009. So number 4 is the toughest one. Has 1,423s since 2009. He's done it with 2 different teams, both Western Conference teams.
Okay.
Now he's a starter for a sort of team that finished near the bottom of the Western Conference last year. But he's been around.
Ryan Anderson?
Nope. He's been on the same team for a few years. He signed a big contract with this team after suffering a bad injury with his previous team. He was in a game, Sekou, you and I just talked about. He was in a game last night that you and I just talked about.
Oh, gosh. Who are we talking about?
It's not Wes Matthews?
It is Wes Matthews.
Okay.
He was the toughest one, I think, in this. You don't think of him. You don't think of him as a volume. Well, I guess
he got him up in Portland.
You don't think of him as a 3-point.
He's not.
Guy,
probably he's not that accurate, right? He gets them up.
Where's Damian Lillard on the list?
Damian Lillard, number 10.
Okay.
So Matthews is at 38%, which is better than Harden. But Harden is obviously shooting a ton of his off the dribble and step backs and stuff like that. Well, Matthews is more of a catch and shoot guy. So yeah, he's at 38%. So the rest of the top 10 is Redick at 6, Kyle Lowry 7, J.R. Smith 8, Kevin Durant 9, Lillard number 10.
I would have guessed Redick was higher.
I was going to say Redick, but you know what? Redick was coming off the bench, with the Clippers. No, he did it. I don't know. He should. Yeah, he should be on that list. He should be.
By the way, that 4-point play the other day before Blake Griffin's game winner, the skill it takes to come full sprint, take a handoff, and launch basically in one motion with a guy contesting your shot and actually fouling you, and drain that shot that he made. That was just like one of the, it goes overlooked because Blake Griffin won the game on the next play, but that was one of the most unbelievable plays I've seen so far.
It goes overlooked because Jamal Crawford does it every other night. So
not like that. Not like that, taking a handoff off a full sprint and launching in one motion. That was incredible.
These freedom of movement fouls seem to be helping a lot of guys like him. JJ Redick's having a huge start to the year, and it's like, it's tough to guard him right now with the way the game's being called.
It's tough to guard a lot of people. I'm looking around and I see these scores, and teams in the high 90s with 3 minutes left in the third quarter. I'm like, somebody did something.
Yeah, the game I covered last night, 144-122. Like that used to be once a season you'd see a score like that. Now it's like once a night you see a score like that.
It's playing into the hands of the way the game's being played right now as well. So we're going to see a great season in terms of scoring and just the offensive output for a lot of teams. And it's already started. I mean, this first 9 days or whatever, the season's been crazy. Anthony, I know you will be along for that ride with the Warriors. Great stuff on The Athletic. Check it out all the time. Make sure everybody else does. Check it out. Anthony Slater, appreciate you taking some time and joining us. I know you got to hit the road, get to the airport, man. That season grind with the Warriors, you should get double miles for all that you got to deal with the media on the road and everything else, man. So we appreciate you taking a few minutes.
Yeah, I'm only going to New York, where I'm sure the New York media won't really care that Kevin Durant's in town. So I'll see you, fellas.
No doubt.
I'll see you there.
Appreciate it.
See you there.
Shoot, thanks for the Schumann stat as always. I need the guests to always help out with the Schumann stat because it's too early in the morning for me to try and cheat and get on my computer and look up.
You can give us a preview of your MVP list for tomorrow. Do we have is Blake Griffin cracking the top 5? Is Blake Griffin number 1?
Actually, we've chumped out and we've kicked the list back to next week. We've decided that we're trying to manipulate this thing as best we can, and I'm serious. We got the Raptors undefeated, the Bucks undefeated, Nuggets undefeated, Pistons undefeated, Pelicans undefeated. Every one of those teams has a legitimate guy you could throw up this short into the season for MVP. You know, Giannis has been outlandish. AD has been crazy. Kawhi's playing great basketball. Steph Curry on a team that's not undefeated has to be in that conversation. But yeah, Blake needs to be in there. Jokic needs to be in there. I have no idea how this thing will shape up by next Friday. I guarantee you my hate mail will be outstanding. It's going to be nasty because LeBron's going to be like 11th on the first MVP ladder of the season. So we'll see.
But you got I've said this before, but when you look at LeBron's MVP candidacy, look to the East and the team he left.
Yeah.
And remember how much, like I said it before, like that's going to, I'm wondering if there will be voters that looked at Cleveland and see how much they've fallen off. And right now they look like the worst team in the league.
Right.
There's no
doubt about it. Yeah. There's no doubt about it.
They look like they got killed by the Hawks and killed by the Nets. Like that tells you that they are the worst team in the league. And so I think I'll be curious if voters see that and say, well, you know,
okay, yeah, because
assuming the Lakers, you know, rebound and say and make the playoffs at 6, 7, 8. Like, say if that happens, do voters also take into account how awful Cleveland is? And maybe Cleveland rebounds, but right now they do not look good.
They look terrible, and I think the only thing that will get in the way of that is the great starts by some of these other guys. But 7, 8 games into a season is much different than 3 and 4 games there. You know, we'll see who cools off, who hits a spot where they're not playing out of their minds. I mean, Zach LaVine's averaging 30 a game, Shu. I mean, this is I
saw him in Philly. He looks real. I mean, he's real. I mean, he's explosive and he's comfortable shooting off the dribble, like shooting threes. He's got a really good form on his jumper. You know, he probably helped from the absence of Chris Dunn might hurt him in just that he won't get as many opportunities off the catch. He's going to try to have to create a lot himself, but getting to the basket, he's been fantastic. Yeah. Like I am, you know, open my eyes to Zach LaVine, at least on that end of the floor.
Right.
Chicago has issues on the other end of the floor.
I mean, and they don't. Larry Markka's not even out there, so I mean, you know, I think there's some opportunity there for him now to assert himself in ways that might not have been there if their roster is fully healthy. But it is. It's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to, you know, diving into it early next week, trying to figure out who fits where, you know, on the very first race to the MVP ladder on NBA.com.
I'll be happy to tell you where you're wrong.
Yeah, I know you will. You and Jerry Greenberg, by the way, should have your own show where you know, can dissect the MVP ladder every week. I appreciate your texts every week to ask me, you know, why this guy, that guy is not higher, or why is this guy on the list at all. So much appreciated. We'll be back Monday here on the Hang Time Podcast to check out the NBA.com power rankings by one John Schumann and kind of dissect the weekend's action and see what comes of Steph's trip to Madison Square Garden. I hope he goes for 50-some again, just to keep the weekend buzzing and keep everybody fired up. Be sure to subscribe to Hang Time on Apple Podcasts and Spotify or wherever you get your podcast for a new episode every Monday and Thursday all season long. Thanks again to our man, Anthony Slater. Leave a review. Tell everybody how much you enjoyed listening to him here on the Hang Time Podcast. And we'll see you right here next time on the Hang Time Podcast. Hang Time Podcast.